welcome to this webinar, a joint webinar between GIRI, the Get It Right Initiative, and CROSS, Confidential Reporting on Structural Safety. My name is Rupert Shingleton, and I'll be leading the webinar for you this afternoon. The plan for this afternoon is that I'll give you a short introduction about the Get It Right Initiative, for those of you that are not familiar with us. And then I'll be passing over to Alastair, Soane and Neil Gibbins from CROSS. And we'll have an overview of CROSS, some of the work that it's been doing, and then more recently, some of the fire-related aspects that have been coming to the fore. We'll then, that'll take us probably for about 45 minutes or so. And then we'll have a conversation, we'll share some learning, ask some questions, and stimulate some knowledge sharing that goes on. So to that effect, please do use the chat box that's in your screen somewhere there for putting some questions in, and we'll come to those as we get towards the end. And then when we get to that point, please do put your hand up if you wish to, and put your camera on, and we'll have a conversation. In the meantime, please do leave your cameras on if that's safe and suitable for where you are today. It just kind of makes it slightly more of a conversation, which we'd like to have rather than a one-way presentation to the screen. Okay, so without further ado, let me press on and introduce you to GIRI, the Get It Right Initiative. So the Get It Right Initiative spawned itself from a report done in around about 2015 by the Institution of Civil Engineers. And it was into what is the cost of error, and nobody really knew. And a piece of research was done that was probably one of the first full-on proper qualitative, quantitative industry type research papers. And once we knew that, we had to say, what are we going to do about it? And the document, a strategy for change, was first produced at that point. And these are the headline numbers that came out of that report that stimulated the need for something to be done. And the key headline number is that the cost of error to the construction industry is in the order of 21%. Now, if we go into looking at what that is made up of, you've got your sort of standard 5% direct costs. This would be your NCR, things that we know about, the things that used to always be in the fee when one bid a tender way back when. And then you've got possibly 7% of the indirect costs of those errors, the bits that people never really record, the extra time, the extra money, the going round about to do work again, and the delay to projects. In amongst all of that, there's another 6% has become a value, which is sort of the unrecorded process waste, just the general inefficiency of our industry as a result of making errors and doing things twice and correcting stuff that never actually get recorded, but in our qualitative research has been identified. And then, of course, the famous latent defects, that 3% or so that we know that every contractor and many other consultants and the like have burden in their businesses. So when we put that in the perspective of the construction industry businesses running on a 2 to 3% margin, it just goes to show what a massive drain this is on our business. And in the billions and billions that are spent in the United Kingdom on construction, this would add up to a major number. So we have to do something about it. And the research identified some of the key root causes of the error. And I'll let you browse those as I speak to a few of them, but there's really nothing there that would surprise us. Inadequate planning, and let's include not just the construction side, but maybe the more strategic planning of actually getting a project from concept through to the site. There's plenty in there about poor communications and poor design information. And of course, when the rubber hits the road on the construction site, where there is a lot of people, a lot of plant, a lot of materials at stake, then that's where that design information really starts to cause a pain to the projects. And then down towards the bottom there, course, communication between members of the team, inadequate supervisory skills, all the sorts of things that we could have known, but what are we going to do about it? So the Get It Right initiative has come together to do something about this the best we can. And this is, our succinctly put strategic aim of GIRI, to improve construction productivity, quality, and reduce cost and waste. Simple and quite importantly is that we're looking to try and get this message through to businesses, not just the people on the ground on a site out there in their oranges or yellows every day, putting stuff together, but do our business leaders in construction, the leaders of our industry really know where they can make a difference as well. So what is GIRI at the moment? We've currently got around about 90 companies and organizations as members. And unlike many other organizations, it really is top to bottom and pan industry. We've got government advisory bodies. We have government clients such as Network Rail, National Highways, or Highways England, forgive me these days, HS2, through many other private clients. We've got architects, we have structural and civil engineers, we have a good proportion of tier 1 contractors, but now more recently quite a good number of tier 2 and specialist contractors. And maybe of interest to you, we have a few legal firms and indeed some insurers that are, of course, at the sharp end sometimes of dealing with the costs of our errors. So what are we about? Let me just sort of summarize this for you. I'm going to click through. GIRI sets itself up to try and make people think a little bit, try and make people look for the solutions before we make. Construction industry has always been very good at asking how to do something after we've done it wrong. Always very good at looking for an innovative way to correct something that we've mucked up. And what we're looking to do is try and create people are thinking beforehand. And so we've got some training programs that we've generated. We work on a lot of campaigns and we undertake forums such as this. I referred to the research paper that started GIRI in the first place. And we've undertaken another couple of research projects, which I'll share with you shortly as well. And we have members meetings, other forums, and a good presence on social media, where we're looking to get people thinking, get people sharing, and looking at what's going on. And the benefits of this, we're pretty agnostic to which bandwagon you jump on. If it's about productivity and you want to do things faster, well, stop a minute. On the safety aspect, it's considered that around about 40% of accidents and injuries in the UK construction sites are happening whilst folk are redoing work for the second, turning to correct incomplete work. Sustainability is a big issue now, and if you're doing it twice, you'll be using twice as much carbon. If you take anything down when it wasn't meant to be taken down, that's all waste. Then, of course, the basic items of quality and predictability become very important. And now, with difficult times for the likes of High Speed 2 and problems on other infrastructure programs and people saying, can the UK build things? The importance of reputation is important to us all, with so much being done in the UK. So how do we go about this? GIRI has generated 4 training courses with support from the CITB, who initially submitted just over £300,000 from a government fund to increase productivity in the UK industry. And with support from the membership and benefit fund, we have leadership training that affects business leaders and project leaders. We have interface and design management training, which is a great piece of facilitation that I'd recommend for anyone kicking off a piece of design work. It works very well as a workshop. We have supervisor and manager training for our frontline site staff, and we have train the trainer training. That's a mouthful, on all of those items, so that, as well as being able to get this training from ourselves through GIRI training and consultation, every company is open to bring their people forward to get the training and deliver it themselves in-house. And just let me just reiterate as well that it is CITB accredited, so anyone with that sort of registration, they can get a great deal back from their levy as levy payers to support them. We've also created the GIRI framework, which is a mapping methodology looking at the whole system of construction as a system. That is, that it takes a whole bunch of existing protocols and things that you can see the sheet there, things like root cause analysis and SWOT analysis and things like that. Puts it in a good structure that enables both the business and the project to really go systematically about reducing error. And this has been in existence now for a little less than a year, and a few of our colleagues in some of the organisations like Kiers and BAM are really taking this seriously business-wide to try and drive this through. So all of this information is available to our members. I mentioned earlier about research reports. At the back of this, we've got a GIRI design guide, which has been in existence now for probably about 4 years, but just recently, in response to feedback and the way that people like to consume information, it's been re-edited, republished, and it's really successful. It's quite regular. Do search for it on the website where it's freely available to all. Finally, or almost finally, we do a number of working groups. We have an insurance working group, and I mentioned just earlier that this is quite important to a lot of organisations, the cost of insuring our works as a result of the problems we have. We have a technology working group that looks at practical ways of applying the technology that's available and overcoming some of those blockers to really widespread and full use of technology. We have a Building Safety Act steering group that has worked closely with the people that are pulling that one forward, both as the actual act as a industry representative consultee, but also in looking at how it will be applied and upcoming codes of practice and ACOPs, etc., to help us use that effectively. And finally, Construction Leadership Council supports a metrics working group. And this is off the back of things like the industry trying to say, why should we be paying retentions in this day and age, and how do we get away from that sort of thing? Well, maybe the elusive universal metric for error might be the way that we can do that. And the CLC is supporting a working group, pan-industry on that, which GIRI works with. Finally, collaboration, cross-party working. We're here today working with Cross. I certainly do quite a little cross myself. We've seminars. We're also trying to work on joining the dots. A lot of those things that have been identified by Cross, which you'll hear a little bit more about shortly, a lot of the potential solutions are within the resources provided by GIRI. So we're trying to join those up a little bit more. Obviously, we're working with CQI, ConSig, Temporary Works Forum, loads of others across the way. And with that, I'm going to just come to an end there. Please do have a little browse on GIRI. We'll take any questions on GIRI in a moment. And for now, I shall stop sharing my screen and pass you over to, I think, Alastair, who's going to go first.
Right, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much to those who are attending. You should see slides on screen now, but tell me if you can't. Are these slides visible?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Right, CROSS stands for Collaborative Reporting on Safer Structures. It's been ongoing for a number of years, and I will go through a bit of the history, some examples. But whilst most buildings are designed and constructed and occupied perfectly safely, every day somewhere in the world there are collapses, and every day there are major fires. But we can improve the situation by learning from experience, and that's what our job is to do. Pick up information from various sources and share that with advice on how we can improve the culture, which is a very long-term thing, make structures safer and ultimately save lives. That's our big objective. But also we can identify shortfalls, such as the ones you will see from GIRI. We can help improve competence as well. We work with regulators, and we try and do something which is called horizon scanning, which is to see what is the next big thing which might be coming along and affect our industry. But above all, we are there to protect your well-being. So anybody who's been involved with a major event will know how debilitating it can be. Indeed, can be shattering and can destroy lives and careers. If you can avoid being involved with any such event or catastrophe, then your well-being will be much improved. So what do we have as an input to our systems? We get confidential reports, and the confidentiality is a very important aspect of what we do, because we never publish the names of reporters or details. We get input from significant events in the public domain, where CROSS is not the first port of call, but we have an input. And then on all of those, we get comment from our expert panels, who are a group of volunteers who represent the very best in structural and safety expertise within the country. And we'll talk a bit more about making a report, but on the right-hand side of that screen, if you want to make a report, and we hope you will, then details are on the website telling you what you need and how you can go about it. Now, the output from us, we have a website. You can just put CROSS safety into any search engine and it will come out. We function very effectively over the last couple of years on social media. We publish newsletters quarterly, and that's our June one. And you can get that without a subscription. It's all free to use from the website. On important issues, we write alerts. And we also do articles, presentations like this, and we make references to third parties. And just to show we're on the ball, the GIRI design guide has been highlighted in that June newsletter. So here are some examples of major collapses, the ones we hope to avoid, but to show the catastrophic nature of what can go wrong with structures. And this is the collapse with the most life toll in an event which wasn't terrorism related or war related, and that is a multi-story factory in Bangladesh a few years ago, where 1,100 people were killed and twice that number injured due to defects in design, construction, occupation management, multiple affairs. Here is one in Nigeria. The pile you see in the foreground is the debris from a multi-story building in what was a pancake collapse, classic collapse where one floor comes down on top of another. The most extreme example of that was the World Trade Center collapses, but this is one in Nigeria where there are many, many collapses. Lagos is particularly bad. We don't necessarily get to know the details of them, but structures can be very dangerous in Nigeria. And we've had our own share in the UK. On the left-hand side is Roland Point, multi-story building with a corner of which collapsed as a result of a gas explosion, a relatively small gas explosion near the top, and which led to all sorts of changes in building regulations and the design for increased robustness in buildings. And on the right, of course, is the sad site of the Grenfell Tower. We'll talk more about that later, but events relating to catastrophic situations in buildings can occur in London as well as in anywhere else. And here is an example from America. You can see a pile of debris in the middle of the picture on the left, and that is the south side of a condominium block. The north side remains in place. It was 40 years old, reinforced concrete, and it collapsed with virtually no warning. Collapsed at night, so the apartments were occupied, and there were 98 fatalities. There's an investigation going on at the moment by an organisation called the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is a very, very high level federal agency in the States. And when its results come out, probably early next year, the recommendations will have profound effects on the way we all think about 40-year-old concrete buildings. How safe are they? And how do they need to be observed in order to make sure that we don't get similar events here as well as in the States? And talking about the States, this is the network that we have. CROSS was started in the UK, but we spread to Australia, and then Australia brought in New Zealand, so that's CROSS Australasia, deals with structural safety. And on the other side of the world, we work very closely with a team in the United States, and that's on structural safety. The next group who join is going to be the pale green in Europe there, which is Germany. We're working with the German Society of Proof Engineers. And we're also talking about quality in France with Agence Qualité Contrôlée, which are more akin, I think, to some of the work you do in that they're funded by insurers. And they're very interested in quality, and they're interested in saving money. So AQC is something you might want to talk to along with us in the future as part of a growing international network. So the reporting process, here's our timeline. We go back to 1976, when CROSS was founded by FIStructE and ICE. And one of the reasons they were founded was because there was a collapse of a couple of very high-profile box-girder bridges. And then there was the aforementioned Ronan Point. So those events and similar ones prompted the institutions to set up a standing committee on structural safety. Then in 2005, it was realised there were lots of events which didn't meet the headlines, but nevertheless, if we published and publicised, lessons could be learned from them. So that was a voluntary confidential reporting system based on a NASA system for aviation safety in the States. And we still talk to NASA about it. And then in 2021, we expanded into FIRE, and Neil will go into that in more detail in a few minutes. So what can we report in? We looked at buildings from cradle to grave, design, construction, operation, and end of life. In structures, most reports come at the design or construction phase. In FIRE, most of them come in the occupation phase or the operation of buildings. And we have a very sophisticated safety reporting management system. We've got 25 steps which go from the time when somebody submits a report to the time when it gets published. And these are steps involving anonymization, comments from our expert panel, legal reviews, and other matters to make sure that everything we publish is safe from the point of view of the reporter, is safe and secure from the point of view of CROSS. And here's our ethos. It looks a bit grandiose, but it's all very genuine. The people that we work with are all knowledgeable, authoritative, expert. We operate a no-blame culture. We're independent. And over the years, we've built up a reputation to become trusted and reliable and ethical. So we maintain that profile for our organisation. And our expert panels consist of volunteers from throughout the sectors, from design, construction, academia, nuclear, civil, and the whole gamut of experts who might be expected to operate at the top levels of the construction industry. And some of them have been there for many years, and they're all dedicated to supporting the role of CROSS. One of the aspects which has become to the fore fairly recently, of course, is the Building Safety Act and the Building Safety Regulator. And that's a simplified diagram of information which goes to the regulator. And starting on the left-hand side of the sort of second row, there's going to be a residence reporting route, which is something which the Grenfell inquiry is very keen on, so that residents in the past could complain about something nobody paid any attention. The building safety regulator will now have a fast-track route for residents that talk directly to them. There will be whistleblowing, and whistleblowing is when there is malfeasance or some kind of irregularity, possibly criminal, possibly illegal. Excuse me. We don't deal with whistleblowing, we deal with confidential reporting, but there will be a whistleblowing route. There will be a mandatory occurrence reporting system for certain types of event which are prescribed by the Act. And then we've got CROSS, which is the voluntary occurrence reporting system, which is up and running, and we provide advice to the building safety regulator at the moment. Quite a complicated system, and here's how CROSS works, another way of looking at it. So the CROSS model of voluntary occurring reporting system, we get data. That data is turned into information. The information is then turned with the aid of our expert panel, our editing and the processes we go through into knowledge. And that knowledge is then fed back into industry by way of insight so that we can look and we can do our horizon scanning. So we add value to base reports by the work of our expert panel. And here are some structural examples from design to demolition. The picture on the left is a part of a complicated computer finite element model. And the concern there is, how do you know where the load is going? It's too complex almost for a human to understand. So we get a lot of reports about computers, IT, and the use of technology. The one in the middle, very basic, crane collapse, 30-ton counterweight, fell over and passed through 6 floors of a building without killing anybody, even hitting anybody. And that turned out to be a problem with the foundation and the connection between the foundation and the crane base. On the right top, we have a picture of premature partial demolition of a large panel structure which fell down before it should have done because of a lack of inherent robustness. Bottom left is one from our colleagues in the highways world, where pieces are shown falling off a motorway bridge onto a highway. The middle of that diagram is from our June report newsletter, and it shows a highly complicated steel connection to a concrete core and all sorts of light coming in from different directions, and it's all held by the single bolt which was hidden beneath layers of structure and fire cladding. So concerns about a single bolt fixing. And of course that brings to the 4 bolts, for example, which was the failure of the Boeing aircraft recently, and the failure at the Manchester Arena from some equipment which fell down, both because of a lack of bolts. And finally, the picture on the right, a bit difficult to make out, but it's some unfortunate person fell through the floor of a temporary seating stadium at the tripping of the colour due to defective construction or effective maintenance. So we cover all the gamut, and I'm going to give some examples. I'm going to rattle through these, but that on the left is a block of apartments. There were balcony accesses, walkways at 2 levels. You'll see the top one fell onto the bottom one, fortunately without anybody being killed. But if you look at the picture at the right-hand side, outlined in red, there are picture of the breakage, and the rebar is in the bottom of that slab. So that slab had existed for years without any reinforcing being in the top, where, being a cantilever, of course, it's where it should have been. We get quite a lot of reports about problems with schools. And this is a rather complex roof which collapsed one night. Again, we get a lot of collapses at night, possibly due to temperature changes, but also it's luck when buildings are not occupied. And this is a complex roof over an assembly hall made of bits of plywood cladding, some softwood battens, some very small nails and some glue. And it lasted for about 40 years before coming down, and we've had several others since. And one from America, about which we wrote an alert. This is a bridge which was partially built. It was resting above a running 6-lane highway when it came down suddenly, with unfortunately vehicles underneath it. And just a little bit of detail about this one. You will see on the bottom left-hand corner a complex joint with vertical and horizontal members of a concrete truss. There are rebars coming in from several directions. There are pre-stressing cables coming in. And to complicate the thing, there is a drain pipe running through the middle of that connection. It's shown up on the top right where there is a diagonal. And at the bottom right-hand corner, after this had been put in place on the temporary supports, the cracks developed, large cracks, I mean, you could put your fingers through. And over a period of 3 weeks, those cracks developed. They were seen by multiple professional people, including the engineers who designed it, the engineers who supervised it, and federal authorities, and they all did nothing. Then it was decided that in order to try and close the cracks, the pre-stressing in the diagonal would be increased, and as they did that pre-stressing, the whole thing fell apart. So problems with design and construction, most importantly problems with people not paying attention to obvious defects and not having the moral courage to do something about it. Another alert we did was in construction of the Edinburgh schools a few years ago. The white blocks you could see are insulation, so they had nothing to do with it, but the big hole here was caused by 9 tons of masonry falling into a walkway, which a few hours later would have been full of children and parents going their way to this primary school. And it was an endemic fault that occurred in quite a number of buildings, and it's to do with the fixings between the two leaves of the inner and outer wall. And here's one very dramatic photograph of a temporary stage collapsing in the States. It is, in structural terms, an inverted pyramid. All the load is at the top, all the mass is at the top, and it's on very spindly legs. And in a relatively slight wind, this blew over and unfortunately again killed quite a number of people underneath it. We wrote an alert on that, which had been used quite consistently by industry worldwide in relation to the safety of temporary structures. And here's an example taken from the internet. If you can see that large sign lying on the ground, that is a huge hoarding in Delhi. It should have been vertical. It collapsed, and again, multiple fatalities. So temporary structures can be a problem, particularly when there is any kind of wind related, particularly if they're up for any length of time. Here is a case where a building in London collapsed on the left-hand side 15 days before the collapse. A building apparently in good order, steel frame. The unusual thing was that the intermediate floors were supported from a story-high girder at the top because the ground floor was to be column-free because it was to be an assembly space. And then just after 40 people had left the site on the right-hand side, the whole thing came down. Problem with tension fixings, but again, a matter of luck because the 40 people who left the site had been on that building a short while beforehand. So safety in a construction site accident or an accident involving any kind of collapse is often a matter of luck and timing. And then much more recently we'll come to the failure of reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, or RAC as it's known. We first got a report in 2019 into this, and we published an alert, and the alert then took off, and it's been RAC has been found in schools, hospitals, government estates. The cost now is amounting to billions. As we know, hospitals are propped, schools are closed. And it's a perfect example of how cross works, because we got a report in, it got processed, it got published, that generated more reports, that then created interest within the institutions, interest within government, then the whole thing mushroomed. But it started, the current problems awareness started with a single cross report. So I rattled through that very quickly. There's more on the website and we can cover more of these in discussion. But I would now like to hand over to Neil, who is going to take over the role, and I'm going to stop sharing. So Neil, over to you.
Right, has that come through to you? Are you seeing my shared screen? No. Bear with me a second. The box that said share screen has moved. I've just found it again. Share screen, PowerPoint. How's that?
Yep.
Thank you, Alastair. Yep. Yeah, thank you, Alastair. Thank you, Rupert. I'm Neil Gibbins, former fire officer, former national lead for fire prevention and fire protection for the National Fire Chiefs Council. I was tapped on the shoulder by Alastair a few years ago after the terrible tragedy at Grenfell Tower. Now, why am I not moving it forward when I press arrow right? If you go right after this one. Yes, so how did Grenfell happen when we in England and in the wider UK have had some of the most advanced legislation designed to prevent fire spreading, the envy of the world? We've had fire laws since 1189, and we tightened them, particularly building in London after the Great Fire of 1666. Alastair showed this slide. I thought I'd just take a mind back to it. The expansion to fire safety in 2021 came as a result of a recommendation by Dame Judith Hackett. You might remember that Dame Judith looked at building regulations and fire safety immediately after Grenfell, identified 52 areas that needed attention, made recommendations. One of those was that CROSS, originally confidential reporting on structural safety, should be expanded to include other engineering disciplines, notably fire. We've stood on the shoulders of the great people in structures and civils and made this system work well for fire as well, we think, but we just now need to get the knowledge out there that fire reporting can also take place through CROSS. We changed the name to Collaborative Reporting for Safer Structures to reflect the collaborative nature and to reflect the fact that we're now broader than just structural safety. Some reports that we've received, we've hit the ground running with areas that actually overlap structural concerns and fire concerns, and the race to build the tallest building from CLT was of concern to one of our reporters. The report we published brought about a response from architects that really surprised us. They made it clear that they'd really not understood the message, and we published an alert that was penned by one of our expert panel. And we understand that this CROSS report has been proffered as good practice and evidence from building control, suggesting that people are perhaps not too brave until we really understand the nature of fire on such structures. We've had a report regarding fire protection to light gauge steel frame walls, about the potential for fires burning on two sides. A little bit specialist, a little bit obtuse, but caused quite a lot of head scratching in the structural steel world. And we know that modern methods of construction are being used more prevalently, and this has now brought about thinking right in the centre of the structural steelwork industry. Balconies, another one that crosses over between structures and fire. We've had collapses in older stone balconies. We've also had fire spread in London via the timber balconies appended to the exterior of the buildings. We believe, we know that people have been using balconies for barbecues, possibly firework displays, but the rate of spread over the surface and the risk to others led to us publishing an alert. Multi-storey car parks. We before Cross was involved with the fire world, Alastair looked at the fire in Liverpool following the arena car park fire. If you look at the picture on the right hand side, you see the degree of devastation to the vehicles in that, but caused a great deal of thinking about how we design and build multi-storey car parks. The recommendations from that 2018 alert pointed the finger at the approved document requiring only 15 minutes fire resistance to the structure, looking at would that provide sufficient robustness. If a major fire occurred, will it lead to collapse? Should we be considering penetrations through the floors that might be vulnerable to allow vertical spread of fire? And there are other areas where pools of burning fuel could form. Was that listened to? Was that picked up by industry? Or we don't believe that the designers of the Luton Airport car park that suffered a terrible fire earlier this year, actually late last year now, the steel frame just about managed to withstand complete devastation, 1,400 cars destroyed, but as importantly, a major infrastructure hub brought to a halt for a good period of time. Really, we were stressing in our reports that all these matters should be considered in the design stage. Lithium-ion batteries had a terrible report through from our international connections in the last few days about a horrendous fire in Korea, but we've been receiving reports from the Fire and Rescue Service and others about the nature of risks caused by malfunctioning lithium-ion batteries, often end of life, often de-recharging, but we're advertising the fact that we've got these problems and we're looking for solutions and looking to share good practice. It's not all massive, it's not all about major structural issues and major fires. We have received a number of reports about detailing, about the small things that possibly go through most buildings throughout their life without causing any problem. But just at the moment that you need to make sure that a fire doesn't spread from one compartment to another, you expect the intermediate material to react appropriately with the fire bats, but in this instance, we've got some incompatible items used together. That kind of detailing often only picked up, well, not picked up generally by building control, the degree of interrogation of the structure that would be needed to identify that, often picked up by the fire service when they question why has this fire crossed that barrier. We think everyone should stay up to date reading cross reports. We very much encourage people to report information to us, but we've sifted through and identified key lessons that can be drawn from cross reports historically, be they structures or be they fire. Similar issues will recur. We don't seem to learn, but we should do. I remember this from the GIRI presentation that Rupert mentioned at the start: inadequate communications and a lack of responsibility. Lack of competency at all levels. Yeah, and we've talked often about the cost of competency, but I like to retort with the cost of incompetency. Deterioration and degradation in older structures coupled with a lack of maintenance cuts across fire. We've got current reports about automatic opening vents that people didn't realise were actually automatic opening vents and have been painted over, have been replaced, been removed because the original plans and design concept had not been passed forward. Changes in architectural trends. We talked about CLT, we talked about light gauge steel, certainly timber frame buildings, and we've had a significant number of fires involving unexpected spread across such buildings. Poor understanding of computer analysis and design packages, again cutting through both structures and fire, I'm saying the structures guys use them to do their sums. Fire engineers rely on a number of design packages to help with smoke modelling. Shortage of structural and fire engineers in industry. Would you believe after Grenfell the number of universities offering fire-related degrees dropped from 6 to 4? It's just quite bizarre. Pressure on fees, the money aspect, creating potential problems for the future. Poor supervision on site. How often in meetings after Grenfell did people say, when we used to have someone there paid permanently to look at quality, was it site foreman or other? And adding to the technical problems, the basic human traits of carelessness, corruption and ignorance. We are completely convinced that CROSS is a useful tool to help improve safety in the built environment. We will only be successful if people provide information to us and people read our reports. That QR code with the rather swish CROSS logo in the centre of it is scannable. If you're sat at your desk and you're not signed up to receive CROSS newsletters, then please scan it now. I can assure you, you'll not be buried under spam. We send emails quarterly to tell people about our quarterly newsletter, and we very much encourage you to, if you identify an issue that others should be aware of, please submit a CROSS report. A collection of photos of failures, common threads, could have been prevented. Someone could have done something, someone could have said something. But let's hope we move forward and learn. We'll have to keep pressing to that. You're the great and good listening today. It's fabulous to have this opportunity to speak to you. Thank you, and back to Rupert, I believe.
Excellent. Well, thank you very, very much, Alastair and Neil, for those summaries of CROSS overall, and then more recently a little bit on fire. So we've got a bit of time now, folks, for a bit of conversation and some questions. There's a couple come up in the chat, which I'll come to shortly. And in the meantime, please do put your hand up or drop something in, and we'll have a little conversation. And before I come to that one in the there's a couple in the text there. I just thought I'd take the opportunity and get in there first, and just ask a question for Alastair, just asking about the contributions that are coming to CROSS. You reported on the association with AQC in France and with Germany coming on now. We've always, in the UK construction industry, tended to have a fairly strong relationship with our colleagues in Australia and New Zealand, but as someone who works primarily in London, it's a pretty cosmopolitan place these days with some fine engineers and construction professionals from all over the world, either physically present or collaborating via the wonders of the virtual world. And I was just wondering if you sort of have felt an improvement in the contribution of the small world and the global profession, and or whether you foresee the growing cross-pollination of knowledge and ideas and experiences from the more mobile profession that we are at the moment. I don't know if you've got a view on that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rupert. Interesting question. We certainly benefit from having associations with other countries. The problems are all common, whether they be structural or fire, and the solutions tend to be common, but we share those, so that's good. We want to bring in some of what we might call the developing world, where there are major problems and where the concept of CROSS, it doesn't really run. And that's a much bigger job. But we're hoping that we can get more people involved. Certainly, we get CROSS reports submitted from around the world, and we get CROSS reports read all around the world from some of the most amazing places. So it's small beginnings, but I think the internationalisation of safety and I would suggest cost saving would have benefits for us all, particularly in this greener, leaner, more troubled world.
Excellent. Thank you, Alastair. And we've got a bit of chat going on in the chat, which is heading your way, Neil. Which is to do with, it starts off about batteries and where are they, and Arwen has asked some questions about design guides, and just before that, I think it was Ian was mentioning about battery fires in battery recycling, and whether that be the big centres that had some problems reading in a few wheelie bins, I understand, with batteries, and I presume it's to do with the fire load that's within the building, as well as some of the stuff you've discussed about timber structures and the fire load in the structure of the building itself. So I don't know if Ian, if you could sort of speak first to the thing about batteries and I guess fire load of what's in the building, and then whether there's some further learning about what we built the building out of.
Thank you. Yes, they're so prolific, lithium-ion batteries. I just thought, how can I put this across best? I'm sat at my desk at home, and I've got three major, reasonable-sized lithium-ion batteries in touching distance, running 2 laptops and a mobile phone. There's enough power in any one of those if the battery was interfered with, broken, crushed, passed through some machine designed to compact it ready for landfill, for it to explode into fire. You get thermal runaway. If there's enough material within distance for the heat to spread, the fire is going to develop. Definitely, we have problems in the waste recycling industry where people are not aware of what they're throwing into the bins and getting mixed up with everywhere else. We've got problems in the transport infrastructure. We've noticed TfL have banned scooters, electric scooters, which have a significant size battery, and they have based that on what they've seen happening around the world with them. Are we changing guidance? Well, we're certainly banging the drum and making noise. The Office for Product Safety and Standards, the lithium-ion batteries are one of their 6 major targets as they're setting up in their expanded role as the construction products regulator. And can I come to the last one, the confidentiality, or shall I pass that back to Alastair?
Please, if you'd like to just sort of come to that, Neil, and I was going to sort of segue that with an item, so Alastair will get the second bite of the cherry, because I think that's a very key point that's worthy of plenty of discussion here. So please come to it first, Neil.
Yeah, we have to emphasise in all of our talks that if you submit a report to Cross, if it says fire on the front, myself or Peter Wilkinson will be the only people that read the incoming report, that know the name of the reporter. We spend time de-identifying, anonymising, and then pass the report forward for polishing and for comment by our expert panels. It's absolutely at the heart of how Cross operates. We've had no breaches. We are absolutely we will ensure that it's confidential.
Fantastic. Thank you, Neil. And Colin, thank you for your question, which is also sort of very important, and I think is a slight blocker to some of the conversations that we have across our industry. Like so many things in construction, whilst the really big things get over planned and over reviewed and over analysed and tend to go well, and it makes us sort of slightly forgetful for the high volume, less significant items, which are of course just a major contribution for those of us who follow how we have addressed the occupational health and safety over the last sort of couple of decades with our sort of understanding of Bird's triangle. Getting rid of the little ones makes you less exposed to the big ones. There's a definite piece to go in there. And I was going to sort of lead a question on that same subject round to Alastair and ask him to speak some more about that, because I noticed that whilst we encourage reporting of things that go on, the story about the balcony collapse on the flats that had been there for 40, 50 years, whatever it was, one would presume that until it fell down, nobody knew, nobody could see. And you drifted straight after that into a story about Florida Bridge, for example, where everybody could see. And it was quite noticeable, and yet nobody did anything about it. And I'm intrigued that within your proposals of the building safety regulator coming forward, there is not only the cross route, but the whistleblowing route. I don't know if you could perhaps speak to us a little bit more about the various routes, both for the extent of legal or confidentiality type issues, but also perhaps opening up more routes for a higher volume of less significant items that we might be able to address.
Quite a lot to unpack there, Rupert. Going back firstly to the confidentiality aspect, our model was the NASA-derived system for safety in the States. And if you are reporting a safety incident to NASA and there is no criminal intent, then in fact you will not be prosecuted. It's just kind of get out of jail federal card, free get out of jail card. We don't have that in this country, but nevertheless, we, by maintaining the confidentiality of our reporters, want to make sure that they don't get compromised in any way for the information they've given us. Having said that, most of our reports are not that confidential. Somebody has noticed something, somebody tells us. Sometimes an event has come up to the surface of an organisation, they've solved it, and then they say, well, we'll tell Cross about it, which is absolutely great. There are barriers to reporting to Cross. There is fear that confidentiality will be breached. I hope over 20 years we've proved that that's a secure route. There is concern about disloyalty to one's client, one's colleagues, one's project, whatever. There is people who haven't heard of Cross have to hike in their reports. There are a number of hurdles, but we by means of these presentations and the publications we do, we endeavour to circumnavigate those. So then another part of the question was, the
higher volume, smaller severity type items.
Yeah. Well, we say nothing is too big and nothing is too small. I concentrate for kind of presentation reasons on the big ticket items today, but we've got plenty of stuff about concerns about small fixings. In fact, one of our biggest reporting categories are small fixings. We will look at issues which appear to be quite minor. And again, the most popular reports on our website are those to do with domestic construction, the collapse of a wall because a prop hasn't been put in properly, or chimney breast falling down or whatever. So we do cover the smaller items. They're not quite so dramatic for a slideshow, I guess. But nothing is too small for us, and particularly if a small item proves to be repeated, something like brick tie failures. You know, one brick tie failure report's not much, but if you get 20, it shows a trend and something must be done about it. So size doesn't matter as far as we're concerned.
I think that thanks for that, Alastair. And I think, given my personal reflection on that, I think that's very much the sort of catalyst, hopefully, to people increasing their reporting on the basis that high reporting culture is a good culture that leads to improvement. In that, the collapse of Ronan Point is perhaps just too distant to many people and not relatable, whereas many of these smaller items, as you say, brick ties in schools is a big serious incident that happened up there in Edinburgh. But of course, find a construction site of any size that doesn't have a brick tie, it's very relatable, isn't it, for us to see. So I think that sort of is part of the way forward. And Colin, who asked the question, how do we get there? And then, that's the thing, isn't it? It's making it addressable and making it popular and making it something that can on and say, oh, I could do something about that. So there we go. I see, sorry, there's Alastair's coming with a question. I'm not sure that I fully understand who risk there is. Alastair, would you like to just sort of switch your camera and microphone on and just ask the question direct rather than me getting it wrong?
Could I step in as it's related to fire and the Risk Authority being a subsidiary of the Fire Protection Association?
There we go. Take it away. Alastair and Neil, have a chat about it for us. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's a reasonable comment. Thank you, Alastair. We are regular in contact with the FPA. They publish a cross report each month in their journal, and they often signpost cross as a solution when they identify difficulties. Yes, yeah. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, I just felt from some of the issues raised today, particularly in relation to lithium ion, there's a lot of work going on within Risk Authority at the moment. So common issues there, but also within Risk Authority, and it's supported by sort of 90% of the UK insurance industry. There's what we call a large loss database. So every fire loss, which is over £100,000 or more, gets populated into this database, and it captures quite an amount of data. And I just thought that might be of interest to Cross. You know, you can capture near misses as well. That could be, it can sort of potentially lead to trends that we're starting to spot. So just thought.
Thanks, Alastair. We've got a new chief executive at the FPA, well known in the industry. I've had an initial meeting with him, but I thought he needed time to get his feet under the table, and I'll be back across to the Fire Service College to see where the common ground is. And definitely, the door is open. The best thing about Cross post Grenfell is everyone can see what a great idea it is. We've just got to make it work.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was a really interesting conversation that certainly is enlightened me. Similarly, Steve, thank you for coming in on your query there. Within the GIRI research, or the original IC research that spawned GIRI, that is being sort of looked at again now to validate and verify to see whether that's still current and how much impact we're making. Large losses, £100,000 going on a register. I can't imagine with the price of houses, many house fires and the content within them, just about all of those must surely come onto that database. Is there any sort of other sort of loss type thing? You know, we at GIRI do tend to focus perhaps too heavily on construction projects that go wrong and have defects and physical thing not quite built right. And we've perennially struggled to value non-conformance, especially the smaller ones. Is there anything else that, you know, within sort of a real database of stuff, because we do like a bit of data these days, don't we, where there are sources of information that we haven't previously seen?
If I can start off on that, in terms of reporting on structural safety, we believe Cross is unique. So the only database is ours, in a sense. The Americans have got stuff on catastrophes like hurricane disasters and the like, but they tend to be from natural causes. So there is, as far as we're aware, there's not a great deal of data on collapses and the cost of them, except perhaps in the bridge world. There's some interest in that. Leading on from which, it may be of interest to know we're going to do an alert on the Baltimore Bridge event, which is what happens when an extremely large vessel collides with an extremely large bridge. And we're doing that in association with the maritime safety organisations, who are going to advise on what should be done to manage the performance of vessels in the vicinity of objects such as bridges and the bridge design community to see what they have to say. So that's a crossover. But we need more data, we need more databases. There are government databases on things like schools and hospitals, but we don't have access to those, for perhaps obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Just
Excellent.
conscious of time, so I think we probably need to wrap up now.
That's what I was just about to say. The questions have dried up, and I picked a few items out that I to keep things going, and I've had the luxury of having all of mine answered. So thank you very much, Alastair and Neil, and thank you everybody for joining today and contributing to the conversation. We've heard from Alastair about FICE and its origins, and we've had a little scamper through the not so very happy history of a few structures, and we've had some stuff from Neil on the post-Grenfell edition of the file, which I think is pretty interesting for us, and certainly from my own perspective, tying in that end user thing, which CDM has been trying to have us to all think about for a couple of decades now, but the reality of it getting on file whilst in use is a real bring it home to you. So thank you very much for that. I would again just advise you all that the webinar has been recorded, so please do like and share when it comes to you. Go around about the place. We will be references to this webinar on social media and the websites of both GIRI and CROSS. So please do all in the spirit of sharing and nudging, like, share, repost, etc., with your contributions. And going forward, GIRI and CROSS are in regular communication. I meet with the guys every week or two, trying to join some dots and say, well, here's a story, but here within one or other party, there's a whole bunch of solutions that folk might use to be good going forward. So please do look out for those and be part of the conversation on the socials or at face-to-face meetings or otherwise. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up. Thank you all very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed it,